This story is not meant to be heard after midnight.
I never believed in mirrors. Not really. They were just glass, reflections, simple enough. But that night, in room 309 of the Crescent Motel, everything changed. The neon vacancy sign outside flickered red and purple through the half-open blinds, casting jagged shadows across the cracked linoleum floor. A woman's body lay on the bed. Her throat was torn, the room smelling of iron and stale perfume. The mirror above the dresser caught my attention. I was a crime scene photographer, trained to see, to capture. But what I saw in the mirror wasn't the corpse. It was me. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light. I stepped closer, camera in hand. My reflection blinked. I didn't. My heart skipped. My breath caught. I lowered my camera and stared directly. The reflection smiled, just slightly, just enough to make my stomach twist. Then I noticed it. A shadow behind me. I spun. The room was empty, no one. Just the hum of the old ceiling fan and the occasional buzz from the flickering neon. The reflection didn't move, or did it? It raised a hand. I froze. My instincts screamed to leave, but curiosity kept me rooted. I raised my camera and clicked. The flash illuminated the room, burning the image onto the film. When I looked back at the mirror, the shadow was gone, but in the corner of the glass, a figure, tall, faceless, dressed in black, stood behind me, not reflected in the real room, but real in the mirror. I wanted to run. My legs moved, but the floor felt sticky, unwilling to let me go. The figure shifted, moving closer, its hollow eyes fixed on mine. It wasn't a person. It couldn't be. Not yet alive. Not yet real in this world. I grabbed the body of the woman for balance, stumbled, and fell. The mirror cracked where my hand hit the glass. A fine line spread across it like lightning. I expected fragments to fall. They didn't. The reflection remained intact, grinning wider than before. A whisper slithered across the room. Not audible, not quite, but inside my skull. "You're next." I tried to scream. Nothing came out. My camera fell. Flash after flash. The figure advanced, silent and patient, and then the neon buzzed one last time before everything. The next morning, I found myself in the cramped, dark room of my apartment, the red light casting a hellish glow on the developing prints. My hands shook as I pulled each photograph from the chemical tray, water dripping onto the concrete floor. At first glance, the images looked normal. The motel, the room, the body. But then I noticed it. The faceless man. In every single frame, standing just behind me, watching my reflection in the glass, the corner of a mirror, the window pane. He was always there, watching, patient. And then I saw the last photo. It wasn't the motel room anymore. It was me, sprawled on the floor, throat ripped open like the woman from room 309. The red light caught my eyes, wide with terror. I dropped the print. The chemicals splashed and hissed, filling the air with a sharp metallic tang. My own reflection in the small mirror above the sink grinned. I rubbed my eyes, convinced it was sleep deprivation or the stress of the week. But when I looked again, the reflection moved on its own. My lips curled into a smile I wasn't making. I tried to leave the room, but the door wouldn't budge. The faceless figure appeared in the corner, behind the glass, shifting slightly closer each time I blinked. I stumbled backward, crashing into the table. Papers scattered. The camera's strap swung like a pendulum, its lens reflecting 1,000 tiny Claires, all screaming silently. A whisper slithered across the red-lit walls, not from a speaker, not from the air, from inside my skull. You took my place. I lunged at the mirror, smashing it with a photographic tray. Shards flew everywhere, glinting like teeth in the red glow. But the reflection didn't shatter. It stared. Wider grin now, and the faceless man stepped forward, emerging from the broken shards. Panic clawed at my throat. My breath came in shallow, uneven gasps. Every sound in the room amplified. The dripping water, my shallow breathing, the low hum that seemed to resonate through the floorboards. Then my camera clicked on its own, each flash illuminating the room in violent bursts. Every flash revealed more versions of him, each one closer, each one real. My own reflection twisted, lips opening to scream a warning I couldn't hear. I realized then, the mirror, the photographs, the reflections, they weren't just showing me the past, they were showing me the future, and in every future, I was already dead. Detective Hale arrived at my apartment later that morning, face pale, eyes narrowing at the sheets covering my mirrors. He didn't understand. He couldn't. I tried to explain, my voice trembling. It's him, the man in the reflections. Hale's lips pressed together. Clara, there is no one in your photos. I checked the negatives. I wanted to scream. He couldn't see what I saw. He couldn't see the way the mirrors trembled as if breathing, the shadows stretching unnaturally across the walls. One by one, the mirrors reflected figures, not just mine, not just the man's. Faces of past victims stared back at me, hollow eyes pleading silently, their mouths opened in muted screams. I turned to Hale. Do you see? An. He stepped closer, and for a second, everything seemed normal. But in the reflection of the tall cabinet behind him, his eyes turned black. A faint, unnatural smile curved across his lips. I backed away. He looked normal again, confusion written on his face. "You saw him," I whispered. "You saw what I saw." The room temperature dropped. Frost formed along the edges of the mirrors, spreading slowly. The whisper came again, louder this time, threading into my mind. "Soon, it's your turn." Hale froze. The mirrors began to crack spontaneously. Fine lines spiderwebbed across the glass, each one distorting reality further. I realized the man wasn't just in reflections anymore. He was inside the glass itself, waiting, patient, hungry. A loud crash from the kitchen made me jump. Hale reached for the door. I grabbed his arm. "No, don't." The broken glass shimmered violently, and the figure emerged, stepping out of the mirror like a liquid shadow, solidifying in the world. Faceless, silent, black coat trailing across the floor. Hale's eyes widened in disbelief, but before he could react, the figure turned to me. My heart stopped. "You've been chosen," it whispered, and the lights went out. I fled into the streets, the neon lights of the city reflecting off puddles. Every window, every shiny surface projected my own terrified face. And behind it, him, always behind, always moving closer. The camera dangled from my wrist, clicking involuntarily. Each flash revealed multiple versions of myself, all twisted, all screaming silently. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, overlapping as if the city itself had multiplied my terror. The alley ended in a wall of discarded mirrors. They were stacked like sentinels, waiting. I stepped forward, and every reflection showed subtle differences. Bruises I hadn't yet received, eyes I hadn't yet closed, mouth twisted in silent screams. Then he stepped out, the faceless figure, taller than any human should be, emerged from the mirrored surfaces. He moved with grace and malice, gliding across the alley floor. My breath caught. The puddles reflected not my own feet, but countless bodies. My victims, or future versions of me. The shadows shifted, whispering my name in a chorus of distorted echoes. I stumbled, fell into a puddle. Water splashed, reflections rippling. I could see all my deaths in the shimmering surfaces. Impaled, strangled, drowned. He approached, step by step. A faint whisper rose above the hum of the city. Next. I arrived at my apartment, hoping the familiar walls would offer some kind of solace, some fragile illusion of safety. But the moment I turned the key, a wave of cold swept through me, sharp and biting. Every mirror in the hallway reflected not just my face, but him, faceless, black-coated, grinning in silence. My breath hitched, misting in the icy air. The living room was worse. Every wall was lined with mirrors I hadn't installed. Some had frames carved with grotesque patterns I couldn't recognize. Others were cracked, jagged lines splitting the reflections like lightning tearing through glass. And in each reflection, my own eyes stared back at me, but hollowed, bruised, whispering silently of horrors yet to come. Then I saw the photographs scattered across the floor, pinned to the walls, hanging from strings like some macabre mobile. Images of me, no, images of Clara's, falling, screaming, sprawled in ways I had never been, yet somehow knew I would be. My stomach churned violently. My hands shook as I reached out to touch one. The paper felt unnaturally cold, almost alive, pulsing faintly under my fingertips. I tried to cover the mirrors with blankets, sheets, anything. But as soon as the cloth touched the glass, the image beneath glimmered through, mocking my attempt to hide. The faceless figure moved silently behind me in every reflection, closer with every heartbeat. I could feel the cold emanating from it, curling around my spine, wrapping my senses in fear so thick it was suffocating. My phone vibrated violently on the counter. "Unknown number," I answered. A distorted whisper slithered through the speaker, barely audible but unmistakable. "Follow or join them." The room seemed to bend around me. Shadows stretched unnaturally, mirrors multiplying themselves until the walls became endless corridors of glass. My own reflection reached out, mimicking my trembling movements, lips curling into a smile I had not made. I stumbled backward, tripping over scattered photos, crashing into the couch. The sound of splintering wood echoed unnaturally, as if the apartment itself were alive and mocking me. A whisper rose from all sides now, layered and urgent. "Soon your reflection will belong to me." The faceless man appeared, not in the mirrors, but in the air itself, a distortion of reality. Step by step, he advanced. I clutched the last photo in my hand, camera dangling from my wrist, hoping to record something, anything, as evidence. The images shimmered violently, the reflections flickering, and every pane of glass in the room became a window into a nightmare that had no end. I realized then there would be no escape. Every mirror, every reflection, every photo was a trap. He wasn't just hunting me. He was rewriting me, replacing me, until all that remained of Clara Jensen was nothing but a reflection trapped forever in his realm. I stumbled out of my apartment into the hallway, but it wasn't the hallway I knew. The corridor stretched endlessly, walls lined with mirrors that reflected not just me, but countless versions of me, each one frozen in terror, eyes wide, lips screaming silently. My legs burned as I ran, but the hallway seemed to stretch further with every step. The fluorescent lights flickered above, buzzing in a rhythm that made my teeth ache. Shadows crawled along the walls, dark and viscous, moving independently from any source of light. My reflection moved differently from me, lagging, twitching, mocking. I tried to scream, but the sound never left my throat. Then I saw them, faces of past victims, etched into the mirrors. Their eyes followed me, pleading silently, their mouths opening and closing in whispers I couldn't understand. Some of them reached out with pale, translucent hands, pressing against the glass as if begging for release. The faceless figure appeared at the far end, emerging from the mirrors as though they were liquid. He glided forward effortlessly, coat trailing like shadows bleeding into reality. I turned to run, but the hallway twisted impossibly, doors appearing where walls had been, mirrors reflecting infinite versions of myself. A whisper threaded through the maze. You cannot escape. Every reflection is mine. I reached a door marked with peeling numbers, 612. My hand trembled as I pushed it open. Inside was a room filled with mirrors stacked from floor to ceiling, each angled to create countless reflections of the same small space. And in every reflection, the faceless figure was closer. I could feel him breathing behind me, even though nothing was there. I backed into the center of the room, heart hammering, camera shaking in my hands. Each flash of light revealed yet another version of him, crawling over the walls, stepping through the glass, appearing in places they shouldn't exist. My own reflection raised its hand to cover its face, as if anticipating the horror that was coming. The whisper became louder, layered, insistent. Soon, your reflection will shatter, and I will step out. I realized with sinking dread that the mirrors were not just reflective surfaces. They were portals, each one a trap, each one a gateway for him to enter my world fully. The hallway outside had become infinite. The room inside had no corners, and every mirror multiplied the terror beyond comprehension. I gripped the camera like a lifeline. Every shutter click was a heartbeat. Every reflection was a countdown. And with each moment, he advanced, patient, inevitable, unstoppable. I thought I had escaped, but the city had changed. The streets twisted unnaturally, neon lights bleeding into one another, reflecting in puddles that weren't there moments ago. Every glass window, every car windshield, every polished surface held him. The faceless figure, watching, waiting. My camera, dangling from my wrist, clicked on its own, each flash revealing versions of me I didn't recognize, some screaming silently, others frozen in horror, all staring at the same figure advancing relentlessly through the reflections. My legs moved faster than my brain could process. my breath sharp and ragged. Every alley I ran down became a corridor. Every door led back to the same endless reflection maze. I couldn't distinguish reality from glass, truth from illusion. Even my own shadow betrayed me, stretching unnaturally, flickering independently, merging with the darkness behind him. I ducked into a convenience store, hoping to find refuge. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting erratic shadows. The mirrors behind the shelves multiplied the shelves themselves, reflections stacking endlessly. And there he was, faceless, looming behind my reflection, closer than the physical space allowed. A whisper slithered into my mind. You cannot hide. I will follow until the last breath is yours. I raised the camera, flashing desperately. The images revealed him in the periphery, in corners, emerging from mirrors that shouldn't exist. His presence wasn't just visual, it was physical. A weight pressing against the back of my skull, cold and suffocating. Panic drove me toward the door. I pushed through, expecting the familiar streets, but found an alleyway that looped impossibly. My own reflection was there, not in glass, but standing, moving, alive, mimicking my every step a second behind. It raised its hand as if warning me, he's closer than you think. The faceless figure glided toward me, its coat trailing like smoke, movement fluid and silent. Each step distorted the air, creating ripples that bent light and reality. I stumbled backward, falling against a stack of mirrors leaning in the alley. The glass shimmered violently, and I could see hundreds of versions of him, each one stepping closer with the same patient, inevitable intent. I screamed, but the sound vanished in the warped reflections. My pulse thundered in my ears, my hands shaking violently as I tried to flee. I realized with crushing horror, running was meaningless. The reflections were everywhere, and the figure, patient and relentless, would always follow. I reached the high-rise apartment building, desperate for sanctuary, but the windows reflected the city like liquid mirrors. Each pane showed me running, screaming, falling, versions of myself I hadn't yet lived, and behind each, him, always him, faceless, patient, a predator indifferent to distance. The elevator door opened, metallic and cold, but the reflection inside showed not me alone. Thousands of Claires lined the walls, each trapped in a silent scream, each watching the figure approach. I stepped inside, hoping the confined space would protect me, but the mirrors bent reality. The elevator walls stretched, elongating the reflections until I felt as though I were inside a tube of glass, with no floor, no ceiling, no escape. The whispers grew louder, layered and urgent. Soon, your reflection will be mine. Soon, you will belong to the mirrors. I pressed the buttons randomly, floor after floor, but every time the doors opened, the hallway was the same. Mirrors stacked impossibly high, each showing a version of me caught in his grip, eyes wide with terror. My own reflection raised a hand in warning, but it was too late. The faceless man emerged behind me in the glass, fluid, unstoppable. I tried to cover the mirrors with my jacket, throw them over, smash them with my camera, but nothing worked. Each reflection shimmered, multiplied, and the figure's presence pressed against me like a physical weight. My heartbeat thudded violently, echoing through my ears as I realized the mirrors weren't just reflecting, they were portals. A flash of lightning outside lit the hallway, revealing thousands of tiny shards of mirrors floating midair, each reflecting me, each reflecting him, all circling, closing in. I stumbled, my hands shaking, camera dangling like a lifeline I could no longer trust. Then the elevator doors closed violently behind me, plunging everything into darkness. I felt him glide closer, closer, until the air itself seemed to warp. His faceless head tilted toward me, a whisper, sharper, almost tangible. You cannot escape. Every reflection, every shadow is mine, I screamed, lungs burning as the elevator descended, or perhaps it ascended. Time had no meaning here. Every reflection, every pain, every mirror in the city and the building was connected, and he was patient. He always had been. I realized then that no corner, no shadow, no window could hide me. He was infinite. I was finite. And the mirrors, they would never let me go. I returned to what I thought was my apartment, but nothing was familiar. The door hung crooked on its hinges, the lock shattered. Inside, mirrors covered every wall, every surface, each one reflecting a version of me trapped in terror, screaming silently. The room pulsed with cold, the air thick and oppressive, like inhaling iron and shadow. The photographs were everywhere, scattered across the floor, pinned to the ceiling, floating midair as if suspended by invisible threads. Each one captured a different death, a different horror, and in every frame, the faceless man loomed closer. I tried to breathe, but my lungs filled with icy air. I reached for the largest mirror, hoping to destroy it, to break the cycle. My hands trembled violently, the glass cold and unyielding. When I struck it, instead of shattering, it rippled like water. My reflection reached out, touching mine with long, distorted fingers. I screamed, stumbling backward into a wall of mirrors, each reflecting a future that had already happened. The whispers filled the room, overlapping in dozens of voices. Soon, your reflection will be mine. Soon, You will join them. I backed into the center of the apartment, camera swinging from my wrist, clicking uncontrollably. Each flash revealed him closer, advancing silently, impossibly. He wasn't bound by walls, doors, or even space itself. He existed in the reflections, in the glass, in the air around me. I stumbled toward a window, hoping for escape, but outside was not the familiar city. Streets bent at impossible angles, buildings stretched and folded like paper. Every reflective surface outside mirrored my terror, showing me dying in ways I hadn't yet imagined. I realized with chilling certainty he was rewriting reality. Every reflection was a trap, every glass a portal. There was no escape. Even if I fled, he would follow, endless and patient. The whispers became a chorus, layered and urgent. You cannot hide. You cannot run. You are spy. I am infinite. Suddenly, the mirror behind me pulsed violently. The faceless figure stepped out, fully formed, solid and horrifying, gliding across the apartment floor. I fell to my knees, camera slipping from my grip. He raised a hand, and the reflections in every surface around me warped and multiplied, creating 1,000 copies of him, all moving closer, all patient, all inevitable. I screamed, a raw, desperate sound swallowed by the infinite mirrors. My heart hammered as I realized the truth. He didn't need to kill me physically. He would trap me forever in his realm, a prisoner of reflections, endlessly hunted, endlessly terrified. I was cornered. The apartment had transformed into an endless hall of mirrors, stretching infinitely in every direction. My own reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed and terrified. But not me, not anymore. This version of me was already trapped, already screaming silently, already his. The faceless figure stood before me, impossibly tall, coat-trailing shadows that seemed to devour the light. His presence pressed into my chest like a physical weight, and every heartbeat was deafening. The whispers had grown into a cacophony, countless voices screaming layered words into my mind. You belong to the mirrors. Forever, no escape. I ran, but the floor beneath me shifted, reflections rippling like liquid glass, creating endless paths that led back to him. My lungs burned, my heart pounded, every nerve screaming to flee, but he advanced silently, inevitable. I grabbed the largest mirror I could find, swinging it at him, hoping for some impossible victory. The glass rippled, and instead of breaking, it absorbed the light, reflecting his image multiplied 1,000-fold. Every reflection I saw was him stepping closer, reaching for me, grinning in silence. My own reflection raised its hand, warning me, but it was already too late. The air shimmered violently, the boundaries between real and reflected dissolving. I realized, with finality, the mirrors were not just surfaces, they were gateways. He didn't need to step through. They were already him. The whispers merged into a single voice, patient, cold, and eternal. Your turn, Clara Jensen. The mirrors fractured simultaneously, spiderwebbing across the walls and floors, reflecting infinite versions of him, infinite versions of me, all screaming silently. My vision blurred. The air around me thickened, pulling me toward the reflections. I tried to resist, but gravity itself seemed to favor him, dragging me into the glass. One final moment, one final heartbeat. I stared into the faceless eyes of every reflection at once. The terror, the inevitability, the utter hopelessness, all crashed into me. And then, darkness. When I woke, I was inside the mirror. My apartment, the city, the streets, everything existed outside, unreachable. I was trapped, endless, a reflection among reflections, and he stood patiently behind me, waiting for the next Clara, foolish enough to look too long into a mirror. I screamed, but it went unheard. I am nothing now but a warning, and outside, the faceless man still hunts, patiently, inevitably, eternally.
If you're still here, it means it found you too.